Bonjour à tous et à toutes.
Good morning. Thank you very much for being here at La Villette. And there are many of you online as well this morning. Thank you very much for being with us. I have the great pleasure to moderate this new ministerial event of the Alliance for Multilateralism, which this time we'll be talking about sustainable food systems within our common agenda, the climate, the environment, health, and the fight against inequalities. We have the great good fortune to have here with us on the scene several ministers. Jean-Yves Le Drian, Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs. Heiko Maas, the German Minister for Foreign Affairs, as well as Mr. Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Saudi Arabia. And we have several guests online, live, or through video. Without further ado, I will give the floor to our two ministers who will present this session, Jean-Yves Le Drian and then Heiko Maas. Ministers, to you. Thank you, Elizabeth. This meeting is completely in keeping with the spirit of the Alliance for Multilateralism, which we initiated, Heiko Maas and myself, over 2 years ago in the framework of the United Nations, but with the willingness to create a new model for coalitions, for discussion, bringing together states, organizations, all partners, to come up with proposals for multilateralism through action, which is at the heart of our willingness within the Alliance for Multilateralism. And this meeting this morning on sustainable food systems is completely in keeping with this logic that we initiated. And our main goal is to come up with concrete results. We've already had results on healthcare through the actions of the Alliance for Multilateralism, which enabled us to set up the One Health program. And it is also thanks to our actions that we were able to set up the International Observatory for Information and Democracy. We really want concrete actions on. And if we're here together to talk about sustainable food systems, it's so that we can come up with concrete initiatives for this very important topic. And our alliance must act to ensure that the coalition for agroecology can be highly performing and lead to concrete results. We are convinced that agroecology is a wonderful lever to fight against food insecurity. First of all, because it favors development, which of course is essential to fight against poverty and a lack of employment. And of course, agroecology is also very important to promote new skills, new professions, and to fight against climate change, which of course we are fully committed to fighting against. We want to ensure that we will come up with concrete actions. And I see that several topics have emerged from this panorama, namely the emblematic theme of the Great Green Wall, which France is highly committed to, which can serve as a benchmark in the coming years for the concrete application of what it is we want to do within our Coalition for Agroecology. And the French Development Agency, the European Union, which in partnership with our alliance, it's very important for us to meet here together for the Paris Peace Forum. We must devote all our energies to this subject, and it's a new element for our Alliance for Multilateralism, which we created 2 years ago, and which is now bearing fruit. And I hope that we will have identifiable results to all work on together. Thank you, Minister. I now give the floor to Heiko Maas. Minister, thank you very much.
Excellencies, dear friends, for a long time, the global reduction of hunger was among the success stories of our age. But for some years now, the number of people suffering from hunger has been on the rise again. Instead of closing in on our common goal of zero hunger by 2030, we are moving further away from it. And we, the international community, must act to reverse this trend. The United Nations Food Systems Summit in September aimed to transform global food system in order to fight hunger and malnutrition. Now, we must keep up the momentum gained from this summit by developing an inclusive approach which mobilizes the entire United Nations system and which recognizes that hunger is interconnected with other global challenges. And by facilitating contact between all relevant stakeholders and experts. This is where the Alliance for Multilateralism comes in, with its expertise in addressing related global issues, its multi-stakeholder approach, and its ability to put its weight behind United Nations processes. I'm very pleased to welcome today's speakers representing the many friends who support our alliance, governments, international organizations and research institutions. We look forward to hearing from you about the links between food systems, climate change, biodiversity, health and equality. And Germany is already part of this discussion. We are contributing to the global fight against hunger on many fronts. Germany is among the largest donors to United Nations agencies and non-governmental organizations working to improve food security, and the second largest donor of humanitarian assistance. We have helped to put climate change and biodiversity loss firmly on the international agenda. Both are causing instability and conflict and are affecting food security worldwide. And Germany has also been advocating the One Health approach, addressing the links between human health, animal health, and human interference in the environment is key to stopping diseases. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, friends, ending global hunger, mitigating climate change, improving global health, for all of these tasks, multilateralism matters. In fact, it is our only chance. No single country can tackle the major challenges of our time alone. We have to work together. And that's what the Alliance stands for. And that is why it is so great to have you all here today. Thank you very much.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you, Minister. These two ministers have set our goals and reminded us of their attachment to this Alliance for Multilateralism and also to concrete results. They've recalled the investment of all of us on these themes, which we now be looking at in more detail through two roundtables. They've recalled the importance of a climate agroecology, the necessity to have a strong and global approach to Africa, namely through the Great Green Wall, and political engagement, as Mr. Maas said, also have to be accompanied by notable financial commitments. So let's now look in more detail to the concrete suggestions. First of all, through a first roundtable on sustainable food systems, and then a second roundtable where we will broaden our viewpoint to include questions of biodiversity and health. I will now open our first roundtable. acting together for sustainable food systems. And I will give the floor to David Beasley. He's the Executive Director of the World Food Program. Mr. Beasley, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and it's great to be on this podium with such extraordinary voices of influence. And let me say, what is very unfortunate, the world is going in the wrong direction right now, primarily driven by man-made conflict, compounded with climate change, and then now perfect storm with COVID. In fact, hunger rate was going down in such an extraordinary rate. But in the last 5 years, the number of people marching towards starvation has gone from 80 million to 270 million. Out of those, literally 45 million people are knocking on famine's door. I just left Syria and Afghanistan, where I spent the last 4 days. I arrived yesterday. It's heartbreaking to see what's taking place. Now that the winter months are coming, mothers are having to choose with no money, no jobs. Do I buy cooking oil or do I buy heating fuel? They're having to make the choice of starving their children to death or freezing their children to death. This is what we're facing in Afghanistan alone now, a nation of 40 million people. 23 million are marching to starvation. Syria alone is depreciating, its economy deteriorating at an unprecedented rate. I was in Aleppo and Idlib for the last couple of days, talking with mothers who were coming to our distribution point, begging for food for their families. In Aleppo, where we feed about one-third are eating bread and bread alone, in addition to the one-third that we are feeding in that population. And this is just 2 of the countries out of the 45 that are facing extraordinary famine-like conditions that are knocking on the door. If we don't address this, we will have famines of biblical proportions. We will have destabilization of some nations, and or we'll have mass migration. And we know it's 10 to 1,000 times more expensive to feed someone in Berlin or Paris than it is in Damascus or Chad or their home country. But what I did see was some hope with school meals. This is one of the things that the international community, the multilateral community is coming together on. So Germany and France, a special thank you for helping lead the charge on the School Meals Coalition, which is truly impacting children around the world. As I was in Syria and in Afghanistan, leaders from all spectrums, even including the Taliban, were saying, please help us get our children back in the schools. And in fact, with the conversations that I had, they were actually, and the Taliban were saying, allow girls. We know, but when we do school meals for girls and boys, how much it dramatically and dynamically impacts the future of a nation. COVID put over 1.8 billion children out of school. Out of that, 370 million were no longer receiving school meals. Out of that, 70 million, that was the only meal that they would get per day. In Africa, where we in the last few years had doubled the number of children in school meals programs, has been collapsed because of COVID. And so the School Meals Coalition is stepping up in an extraordinary time because we know the impact of a nation's GDP, its stability, and its future is truly linked to how we educate children. And I've seen in the Sahel firsthand, and I can't begin to tell you what happens when we get the support like in the Sahel. When children in school meals programs and we have general food distribution programs, recruitment by extremist groups drops. 12, 13, 14-year-old marriage rates drop. Teen pregnancy drops. Migration drops. Quantify each of those. It's a lot cheaper to feed a child for 25 cents a day than for the cost of chaos and crisis it results. And we also know for every dollar spent in education, there's a $9 economic return. I can go on and on, but I think my time's up. I'm seeing it, and so thank you for allowing us to be with you this morning.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Director. Thank you very much for reminding us of the importance and the urgency to take action. And thank you for also having a note of optimism that when we set up programs such as the School Meals Coalition, it does bring results. It works. And they can be scaled up. I now have the great pleasure to give the floor to the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Saudi Arabia, Faisal bin Farhad Al Saud. Minister.
Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing us together today. I think it's very appropriate that we're talking about food security at the Paris Peace Forum, because food security is intimately linked with the issue of peace and security, and I think it's also appropriate that we're talking it in the context of multilateralism, because we can't tackle the global issue of food security without multilateral action. And we in the Kingdom believe very strongly. We have a strong partnership with the World Food Programme. We also believe in tackling the challenges that climate change poses in a multilateral context, and we are leading the region in that. We recently announced the Middle East Green Initiative, where we are pushing towards afforestation in a number of regional states. It's worth one of the important things I think we need to note is that 75% of the world's farmland is run by family farmers, producing around 80% of the world's food in value terms. Therefore, I think the need to strengthen our efforts to support the small family farming by improving their access to education, technology, markets, empowering women and youth as rural development is directly linked with global food security. I think we really need to lean into helping these small farmers improve their ability to produce and deliver food to their markets. I think if we act this in a rational and concise way, we can really address some of the challenges that we are facing in the area of food security. We also, I think, need to address the issue of food waste. Food waste is a tremendous drain on food security, and we as rich countries have a responsibility there. But I think we also have a responsibility to help less developed nations address that challenge and be more efficient in transport, storage, and distribution of their food production so that we minimize food waste. I think I share David's optimism. If we work together, if we lean into these problems, we can do a lot to improve the situation, but it does need concrete and active engagement from all of us. So thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Minister, sir, and thanks for reminding us of the importance of family farming, young people and employment. And thanks for reminding us that the multilateral framework helps to multiply the effect of all these initiatives and the role your country plays. And thanks for underscored the importance of food waste, which represents more than 40% of total food production and is a huge problem. We are now going to see a video from Ms. Takako Suzuki, who's Secretary of State of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Japan.
閣下、マースドイツ外務大臣閣下、ご出席の皆様。現在、新型コロナウイルスの世界的な感染拡大により、栄養不良の深刻化や飢餓人口の増加が進み、持続可能な食料システムの強靭化の重要性が指摘される中、本日これらの課題について多国間主義同盟の会合が開催されることを歓迎をいたします。世界では10人に1人が飢えや低栄養に苦しむ一方で、3人に1人が過体重や肥満の状態にあると言われます。成長を妨げる低栄養と生活習慣病等を引き起こす過栄養を合わせた栄養不良の二重負荷は世界全体が抱える課題であり、先進国、途上国を問わず、栄養問題に取り組む必要があります。栄養改善には保健や農業だけでなく、環境、教育、ジェンダーなど関連する分野を含む社会全体での包括的なアプローチが必要です。また、政府のみならず、民間企業、市民社会、アカデミアなど幅広い関係者が協力して取り組むことが重要です。これは戦後、日本の栄養改善の経験が示すところです。こうした観点から、日本政府は世界の栄養改善に向けた世界的な取り組みを前に進めるため、12月7日および8日に 東京栄養サミット2021を開催いたします。これはオリンピック・パラリンピックの開催国がリードする成長のための栄養と呼ばれるイニシアチブです。このサミットでは栄養不良の二重負荷の視点から先進国・途上国共通の課題として栄養問題を議論します。また新型コロナ感染症、国連食糧システムサミット、気候変動に関する COP26 という動きも踏まえた議論を行います。主なテーマは栄養のユニバーサルヘルスカバレッジ、それへの統合、安全で持続可能かつ健康的な食料システムの構築、脆弱な状況下における栄養不良対策の促進です。最も重要なことは各ステークホルダーが栄養改善に向けた自身の野心的なコミットメントを表明することです。皆様のサミット参加と栄養改善に向けた資金及び政策コミットメントの発表を期待をしています。日本政府は東京栄養サミットやその他の努力を通じて人間の安全保障の理念に立ち、ユニバーサルヘルスカバレッジの達成を含めた誰一人の健康も取り残さない取り組みを進める決意であり、これこそが多国間主義同盟の精神に合致するものと確信をしています。皆様、ご清聴ありがとうございました。
Un grand merci à
Many thanks to Mrs. Suzuki for reminding us of how important malnutrition is, both undernutrition and overnutrition with obesity and illness. She has called on us to be vigilant and to join her on the 7th and 8th of December in Tokyo for the Nutrition for Growth Summit. I will now give the floor to Mr. Gabriel Ferrero, who is the President for the Committee of Food Security. Gabriel.
Excellencies, allow me first to thank Minister Ledrian and Minister Mas for inviting the chairperson of the Committee on World Food Security to be part of this discussion, and thank you for your continued support to the Committee. Well, if we talk about collective action at the global level and multilateralism to face the challenges of food security and malnutrition in the short term, but also in the long term, the challenges that face agri-food systems, then we need to talk of the Committee on World Food Security as well. The committee is an intergovernmental multilateral body that was reformed in 2009 precisely to be fit for purpose, to confront the food price crisis at that time, as well as these long-term structural causes of hunger and malnutrition. And after the reform, the committee brings together 133 of our member states, together with the UN system, but also integrating all stakeholders, civil society, the private sector, the UN development system, notably FAO, WFP, and IFAD, together with the research community and the IFIs. And we come together at the committee precisely to achieve global consensus on the complex issues that underlie the challenges and the structural causes for achieving SDG 2 through sustainable and inclusive food systems. And since its reform, the CFS, the committee has delivered 15 globally agreed policy frameworks to be of use of all stakeholders and, of course, our governments. So, in short, the committee is also one that encompasses the principles and vision of this alliance for multilateralism in action, in practice, as you said before. So now going to the question. Well, indeed, the Secretary General, on his statement of action of the Food Systems Summit, calls the CFS to provide leadership in the follow-up to the summit as an essential intergovernmental and multi-stakeholder inclusive platform. So I see four ways in which this committee can provide this leadership. First, by widely disseminating and making better use of these existing global policy frameworks agreed at the CFS, in a way that they better inspire governments and all stakeholders to action. And these frameworks cover a wide range of very complex issues on voluntary guidelines on responsible tenure of land, fisheries and forests, on responsible investments in agriculture, in protracted crisis, in water, in climate, in empowering smallholder and family farmers. Up to the recently approved, just this year, guidelines on food systems and nutrition, or policy recommendations on agroecology and other innovative approaches. And of course, the ones that will come during this next year on gender equality, on women and girls empowerment, on youth, on data, or on facing inequalities as a root cause of hunger. So these policy products may connect the global sphere to impact in the ground. The second one I see is that the committee may offer its inclusive space at the global level as a platform for connecting countries' pathways, national pathways and strategies for sustainable food systems, food security and nutrition. This means making this committee as a space in which countries, developing and developed alike, we come together to share our efforts, our progress, and connect better with the financing for development and scientific community. And in this way, linking the roots, the grassroots, the local to the global. Third, the CFS may provide a platform also to these multi-stakeholder initiatives, coalitions and alliances, such as those on school meals, David, or those on agroecology, on family farming, to mention some of the examples. They have to come together once per year, regularly, to share progress, connect with each other in a strategic way. I would say that this is a connector between multi-stakeholder, horizontal, or in an horizontal way. And finally, the CFS may also provide its independent science policy interface, the high-level panel of experts, that if it's adequately provided with more autonomy and resources, can join efforts with the IPCC, with the IPBES, and other science policy interfaces, so that together are capable of offering systemic, coordinated scientific evidence. This would be the fourth connector, which means connecting between disciplines and between knowledge and policies. So thank you, Elizabeth.
Merci.
Thank you very much indeed, Gabriel. You have rightly highlighted that the CFS has a number of functions, and I will talk about two of them. First of all, to be a way of forming a consensus, because we need to get populations on board if this is to have any impact. And you said it's important to include civil society, but also to have knowledge and research. And you also highlighted that this consensus is very useful because it can lead to proposals. You talked about pathways to go towards more sustainable food systems. You concluded with science policies, and the CGIAR is obviously concerned by this, and I will now give the floor to Elwyn Granger-Jones, who's one of the directors of the CGIAR.
So much for the invitation, honourable ministers and distinguished guests. CGIAR would really like to welcome this initiative at the behest of the French and German foreign ministers to discuss such an important issue today. For those of you that don't know CGIAR, we are the international multilateral agricultural and food systems research partnership and organization. We have thousands of scientists across the world. We're funded by many governments and foundations, and we work closely and are embedded into many developing countries, working very much with smallholder farmers. We thank France and Germany for their continuing generous support of the work we do. So we are a form of science multilateralism. So I just wanted to make 3 points about the question I was asked to discuss, which is what role research can play to support sustainable food systems in the global south. First point is on context, we must transform those food systems, not just in the global south, but in the north. And those systems are increasingly integrated. And the amazing thing is the conversation we're having today, is completely different than we would have had 5 years ago, when we would have needed to constantly remake the case for why we need to transform our food systems. But in many ways, that argument has been won. We now see food systems as very much the root cause of many of societal challenges and very much part of the solution. And I would not go into more detail because it would simply be repeating the excellent comments my colleagues have already made. CGIAR itself is transforming ourselves. Our mission statement is completely different to what it was 50 years ago. when the focus was largely on increasing productivity and securing harvest. Those things are still important, but in a very different context with a need to address those other issues. So my second point is that to transform food systems, we need innovation, and research is the fuel of innovation. It's not just innovation in technologies, which are still important. We still do not have sufficient technologies to, for example, withstand the kind of heat increases we will see for crop growing, but it's also behaviors, it's practices, it's policies. Really, those fresh ideas for how we change the way we work and support smallholder farmers in doing so was the only way we can make the right choices. Smallholder farmers, there's about 500 million smallholder farmers. They produce up to a third of our food, and they are working with in production systems and with technologies and practices that need to rapidly change and be innovated upon, especially in the face of climate change. There are many types of innovations that we are working on in research, and I won't even try and list them here, but it's really exciting research around, for example, just looking at the headlines in the last week, producing pearl millet with high iron content, food safety policies being improved, especially in the face of the zoonoses, introducing solar irrigation, how to do that in a way that is sustainable, measuring livestock emissions because we simply didn't have that data for livestock in the developing world, and much of the global data therefore needed to be improved, reusing wastewater in a safe way, improving crop variety so they can withstand the kind of heat extremes that we will face, working on digital platforms so that they have the right data to actually be useful to smallholder farmers. And I could go on and on, but let me stop there. It's just to say that there's so much innovation, research needed to do to tackle the kind of challenges we face. My last point is that all this has to be done in partnership. The traditional silos that we created around technical groupings don't serve our purposes anymore. We need to work beyond the nation state. We need to work beyond and across technical areas. Research benefits by being international and surpassing those boundaries. CGIAR is an expression of that. We need to have far more non-traditional partnerships to move forward. So we truly welcome this re-emphasis on multilateralism, but a different kind of multilateralism to address this very complex interconnected problem. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much indeed, Elwyn. Thank you for that presentation of the ambitious reform of CGIAR that you've outlined, and which foregrounds sustainable farming and the climate, and there are close ties between France and CGIAR, closer than before, and also between the institution that I head myself and CGIAR. So thank you very much for your presentation, and well done for that ambitious reform. And we're now going to move to the second round table, and the subject is food systems, the climate, the environment, and health. So we're going to be sort of broadening our horizon for this. And to begin with, we're going to listen to a video recording of Wanda Marcotta, who works for One Health. This expert panel is one of the institutions that has emerged from the COVID crisis, and France, and particularly Minister Le Drian, has been very closely involved in this. So we're now going to listen to Ms. Wanda Marcotta.
It's an absolute pleasure to address you as the co-chair of the One Health High-Level Expert Panel, OLEP. The OLEP's panel's main goal is to advise the partners, the OIE, FAO, WHO, and UNEP, based on scientific evidence. And we therefore aim to document and analyze One Health approaches to understand what has been successful and what not. What do we really know on the ground? Identify the gaps, and how can we go forward? It will also maximize the use of resources if we stop working in silos and instead work together between sectors and disciplines to address the same problems. The panel was only established in May this year, and the first meeting took place on 17 May, so it's still very new. And at the first meeting, we decided that the most effective way to address the terms of reference was to build 4 working groups that will look into priority issues. These groups have been working tirelessly and are meeting every 2 weeks to advance their relevant portfolio. Outcomes are reported and agreed on at full panel meetings, and we already had 2 of these, and the summaries of these meetings are publicly shared on the website of ALAP. The working groups focus on One Health implementation, including a definition that reflects this holistic approach, developing a theory of change to address the specific problems, and set up inventories of current relevant initiatives and gaps. Surveillance are also investigated, specifically where we will not just look at pathogen detection in the future, but really including a One Health approach also in surveillance strategies. This will include data sharing and collection on factors causing spillover, and ranking these factors according to importance and scientific evidence is also important. The short-term output of the panel will be a report that we will publish towards the end of the year. We also have regular interactions with the 4 partners to share progress, as well as several public appearances to promote the One Health concept. The definition that we recently developed were shared at the World Health Summit, and this will also be more publicly published before the end of November. This definition is really a more holistic approach towards One Health, and it says that One Health is an integrated, unifying approach that aims to achieve optimal and sustainable health outcomes for people, animals, and ecosystems. It recognizes that the health of humans, domestic and wild animals, plants, and the wider environment, our ecosystems, are closely linked and interdependent. The approach mobilizes multiple sectors, disciplines, and communities at all levels of society to work together to tackle threats to health and ecosystems while addressing our collective needs for healthy food, water, energy, and air, taking action on climate change, and promoting sustainable development. This is anchored by a number of underlying principles, which include equity, socio-political parity and inclusion and engagement of communities and marginalized voices, socio-ecological equilibrium that seeks a harmonious balance between human-animal environment interactions and acknowledge the importance of biodiversity, access to sufficient space and resources, and the intrinsic value of all living things within the ecosystem. Stewardship and the responsibility of humans to adopt sustainable solutions that recognize the importance of animal welfare and the integrity of the whole ecosystem, thus securing the well-being of current and future generations, is also very important. Transdisciplinary and multi-sectoral collaborations, which include all relevant disciplines, both modern and traditional forms of knowledge, and a broad representative array of perspectives, needs to be addressed. So it's clear that OLAP has done quite a few things in the last few months, and the definition will really take us forward on what we really mean with One Health and how we can implement it. But it's also very important that there's political will and political commitment to really implement a One Health approach on a ground level. Thank you.
Un grand merci.
Many thanks indeed, Mrs. Marcotta. You have reminded us of how important the One Health approach is. It encompasses plant health, animal health, and human health, and also the health of ecosystems, and how hard it is to interconnect all of these approaches, which in the past were in scientific silos and also policy silos. She also said how important it is to have political commitment if we are to actually implement on the ground the One Health approach, particularly as regards prevention. This is a very good transition as a way in to welcome Jean-Philippe Dopp, who is the Deputy Director General of the OIE. It's the World Animal Health Organization. Thank you very much indeed. When the OIE was created in Paris in 1924, a few years after the end of the First World War, the health war was not directed against human disease, but an animal disease. It was cattle, a disease, an animal disease that wiped out whole herds and deprived millions of humans of milk, meat, and animal traction. Animal diseases cause more than 20% of loss of animal output. You talked about food waste. This is a major source of waste. 1 person in 5 in the world depends on animal livestock. There are major differences depending on the country, and that's why the OIE encourages countries and donors investing in veterinary health systems, and our organization considers veterinary health systems as a common good for the world. All of this implies major investments, but these are investments that help to enhance the output of our food systems and public health, because 70% of emerging diseases are zoonoses. These are diseases that can be transmitted from animal to man. And don't think that vets can solve everything all by themselves, certainly not. But one thing is certain, with international cooperation and the involvement of organizations like the OIE, which work tirelessly with the tripartite organizations, the FAO and the WHO, and as well as the UN Programme for the Environment to integrate more environmental concerns, that we can try and cope with pandemics, applying on the ground the One Health approach that recognizes the interdependence of human, animal and environmental health, and that forces us to break down silos and to think in a global health system approach where vets obviously play a major role. It's based on evidence and science, as provided by the high-level expert panel for One Health, chaired by Mrs. Wanda Marcotta, whom we just listened to. This panel was set up in record time after the appeal made by the Alliance after the last Paris Peace Forum at your initiatives, Ministers Le Drian and Heiko Maas. It's a solution-based approach. What are the solutions for 2022? One Health, again, 3 priorities: investing in global health systems, including veterinary services, using evidence-based approach with data from the ground. And the OIE has a system, a tool, which provides data and figures about gaps, and integrating the One Health approach in future international legal instruments on pandemics to be discussed at the WHO General Assembly. Ministers, we count on you to help make this possible. Thank you. Thank you very much, Director. And we're moving on speedily because time is running out, and I suggest that we now watch a video with Mrs. Sabrina Elba, Goodwill Ambassador for IFAD.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am so glad to see agroecology on the menu, so to speak, of this meeting. We need to revolutionize how people look at food, how it's produced, who produces it, and what we choose to eat. And agroecology should be at the heart of this revolution, because diversity is the essence of life, and diversity is what drives agroecology. The 20th century model of large-scale monocrop farming has killed off plant life, animal life, insects, and pollinators. 75% of the plant genetic diversity on farms has been lost in just the past 100 years alone. At a time of climate change, a time when ecosystems are under threat, when land is being degraded and biodiversity is being lost, agroecology makes sense, not just for the poor farmers IFAD works with, but for our food systems at large. Agroecology takes a more holistic approach to food and farming. It combines traditional knowledge with science and innovation, and it integrates the 3 pillars of sustainable development: the social, the economic, and the environmental. It delivers healthy, nutritious, and affordable food for all, but it's also key to resilience. 60% of IFAD's projects apply agroecological practices to production, to land management and governance, and to markets and policies. Agroecology is embedded in IFAD's work because IFAD mainly works with poor farmers who depend on fragile ecosystems for their food and also their income. For these women and men, diversity, it's not a choice. It's the only way to manage risk. Poor farmers may not have PhDs or even completed high school, but they are often rich in knowledge and understanding of the natural world. If we work with poor farmers from the global south and listen to them, We can learn from them. And together, we can co-create new knowledge and promote innovations to drive agroecological transition and climate resilience around the world. Often, the best results come from taking a method that farmers have used for hundreds of years and making small changes to improve it. For example, IFAD is working with indigenous communities in the Philippines to promote indigenous farming systems. The communities have an ancient knowledge of organic food production, forest management, and native species that IFAD is learning from and sharing. New farmer field schools are helping indigenous communities learn from each other about diversified production and watershed conservation. And IFAD has helped secure land rights for the people. This has linked producers to markets. Amazing, right? As a result, the indigenous communities are better able to manage and protect natural resources based on diversified agroforestry systems. The project has also created a zero-cost certification to label agroecological produce as environmentally safe, making it more attractive to consumers. This has led to higher incomes and better nutrition. It's what the development community like to call a win-win-win situation. Good for indigenous peoples, good for the environment, and good for the health of the planet. This is just one example of an approach that is working in the global south that farmers around the world can learn from and benefit from. Ladies and gentlemen, food and farming hold the key to ending the climate crisis. They are key to preserving biodiversity and sustaining life on Earth. Agroecology has the potential to help us transform food systems and create climate resilience. We know that we need to urgently fix how we grow our food and value the people who put food on our tables, the custodians of this earth. And we need agroecology to do it. The clock is ticking. We have no time to lose. Thank you so much.
Après ce plaidoyer.
After this plea by Madame Elba in favor of agroecology, I now give the floor to Jean-Luc Ongo, the Special Envoy for the PRISAD initiative. Jean-Luc? Hello, everyone. Thank you very much to the Paris Peace Forum to give me this opportunity to present PRISAD on the prevention of zoonotic infectious diseases. 75% of all emergent human diseases are of animal origins. And it's a major challenge for populations. Let us remind that it's 100 times less costly to invent in prevention than it is to face the crises such as the pandemic has shown. This is an international alliance that was launched in 2020 at the Paris Peace Forum by the French president. And the Forum on Biodiversity, presented by IPBS in October 2020, and in the framework of the creation of the One Health high-level expert panel, so announced a year ago at the Paris Peace Forum by France and Germany. Developed by three research organizations, PRISAD is setting up a coordinated alliance for animal health and ecosystem health. It is indispensable to have a global and multidisciplinary approach with all stakeholders involved, including civil society. PRISAD represents a true tool for multilateralism based on 5 pillars: analyzing zoonotic risks, reducing those risks, early warning systems, surveillance systems, and the commitment of all stakeholders to develop regional networks for health and biodiversity. 5 countries and over 60 research organizations have signed the Declaration of Intention, and we hope that many other countries will join PRISAD to develop synergy and collaboration with other initiatives to give us the best chances to reduce the risk of zoonotic diseases with international organizations such as FAO, the World Health Organization, United Nations Development Program, and the OLED High Panel Expert. So this is a call to the international community so that PRISAD can strengthen our cooperation and pool our research and work for multilateral consultation as reminded by the nature conservation meeting in Marseille. So we want to bring together all of these organizations with the primary signatories to set up a governance mechanism and our strategies, as well as an action plan for the coming years. Thank you very much for your attention and for your interest in PRESAD, and we are here to develop partnerships and alliances in a multilateral framework. Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Ecomas, Jean-Yves Le Drian, I will now give you a chance to conclude. I will be very brief. Thank you very much to Elizabeth for moderating this panel. Thanks to David for his call and for sounding the alarm bells. And thanks to all of you who are implementing the One Health concept. And we can guarantee that our support for the Coalition for School Meals Coalition. Heiko and Ma now have to join another panel in just a few instants, so I will stop here. But I would like to leave some room for Heiko Maas, because this is certainly the last time that we will have this current configuration, given the German political situation. But I would like to thank you, Heiko Maas, for your commitment to this wonderful adventure of the Alliance for Multilateralism. Thank you once again.
Yeah, thank you very much. And there's nothing to add. I only want to say thank you very much to Jean-Yves for bringing us together here in this wonderful city. And to all of you, please stay committed to the Alliance for Multilateralism. Thanks a lot.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais conclure simplement.
Thank you very much. I will conclude by thanking all of you who are here present or online. Thank you very much for your attention.
Come back to the third and final day of Paris Peace Forum. So before we introduce the amazing guest we have here with us, I just want to ask you a quick question, two questions just now. As the fondateur, the founder of the forum, the director general, are you the one making all the decisions? Is the French government making the decisions behind the scenes? I'm curious to know, which is a lot of the questions that people ask, who's making these decisions regarding editorial line, who gets invited, which world leader takes the stage? So yes.
So no, these are fair questions, and it's true that it's really necessary to be as transparent as possible. As many of you know, the Paris Peace Forum is an association de loi 1901, which means it's, you know, the sort of garden variety of NGOs in France. So it's an independent organization that is run by its board, if you'd like, which we call the Conseil Exécutif. The Conseil Exécutif is made up of currently 10 organizations. 5 are from the north, 5 are from the south. Among them is the French government, so one of the 10. And we are fortunate to be able to count on the support of the French government for many things, including all the protocol issues, invitation of heads of state. They help us to do that, but they do not decide on the editorial line of the forum, which is really a prerogative of that board of these 10 organizations. Let me name them briefly. On top of the Quai d'Orsay, we have the Institut Montaigne, we have IFRI, these are 2 think tanks. We also have Sciences Po, the university in Paris, and the Körber Stiftung, which was there from the start. Then we have 5 organizations from the south, including the Aga Khan Development Network, the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, the Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, the Research and Information Service from India, from Delhi, and lastly, Mexico Evalua from Mexico. And so these are the ones calling the shots and deciding on the editorial line of the forum.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Tell us what goes on to put this production up, right? I've heard people talk about how this is an incredibly well-oiled machine, but it takes a mammoth task to do this. So who do we have to thank for being well-fed, for being on time, for this production at this scale?
Absolutely, and I would say for the platform to run smoothly, which is a real technical challenge. Last year, we experimented with this platform that you're using now. This year, we've been using the same platform, but it has even fewer glitches than it had a year ago. The production here, what you see around us, is all the work of Auditoire, which has been our event agency from the start, and we can give a big up to them. And they are being helped for the platform part by another contractor, which is named Mediactive, and which is all the colleagues behind the control rooms, I would say, and being able to produce all of this. So the association, the Paris Peace Forum, the board has decided that Auditoire and Mediactive would be the contractors and would be helping us putting all of this together.
And the secretariat?
And the secretariat, of course, is the real producer of this event in terms of substance, in terms of what goes on, in terms of selecting the project with the jury and showcasing them, in terms of devising the program made up of 80 sessions, 360 speakers, so it's a mammoth task. And so we have a team of about 30 people now working all along the year to produce this.
Okay, perfect. And with that, I want to introduce you to our guest that we have here today. She's called Ami Patel. She's one of the project leaders that we are platforming this year out of the 80 projects that we have. Ami, I think, has traveled the furthest to be here with us, for which we are incredibly grateful. The project she has brought to Paris Peace Forum is called the Eleva Method of Investing, which is led by Agroecology. And I think it talks about a business model that values customer service, that talks about affordability at scale, entrepreneurship with ambition. Those are a lot of buzzwords.
Yes.
I want you to deconstruct what that means. You're the managing director of Capital Partnerships. So perhaps if you could tell us, what is it that you do?
Thank you for this amazing opportunity. It's been such a great learning experience here. So Elevar we are a venture capital firm. We take early stage investment bets on companies that are looking to deliver essential products and services to low income and underserved populations. So think about things that you and I may take for granted. So access to finance, education, healthcare, housing. We're looking to create a business model that provides these access points or these products in an affordable way and alleviates pain points for this customer segment. The customer segment that we're targeting is truly that large base of the pyramid that earns anywhere from $2 to $15 a day. So it is that aspiring class that has lifted themselves up from poverty and has the desires to have much more in life, but isn't properly served by the traditional markets. So we find entrepreneurs that bring anywhere from 10 to 20 years of professional experience, and they're looking to solve a problem in society. They want to leverage their experience and develop these products and focus on this customer segment.
And what geography are you basing this on? Like, where do you do the work that you do?
So we have been investing over 15 years in India and in Latin America. And across Latin America, we focused on Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina.
Okay. Do you want to?
Yes, absolutely. So what are your sources of inspiration? Because many people have been trying to do better in serving let's say, the lower classes who don't have access to these services. What is the origin of Elevar, of this method, and what have the inspirations been?
Sure. When the founders came together, the inspiration was to prove that you can bring a commercial approach and elevate the work that a lot of nonprofits had been doing and taking the baton and bringing capital markets into this segment and elevating these entrepreneurs and being able to scale the enterprises. And so for us, we've been able to deploy over $200 million of equity capital and have that crowd in private sector capital alongside us at the tune of $2 billion. So these are companies that have taken small nonprofits, converted them to for-profit institutions, and taken them public onto public exchanges. Just to showcase that there are ways to serve this class through a more private sector solution.
And how do you choose what portfolio you want to invest? Like, what is the decision-making process?
So we are looking for a company that's targeting a customer that has a high wallet share and has demonstrated demand for a product. We're matching that with a business model that is able to deliver that product at an affordable price. So when you think about the unit economics, you're looking for a unit economics that can maintain that price for that customer segment. So if the cost of going to an affordable private school is $400 this year, it doesn't go to $600 next year and increase over time. It stays at that price point to ensure that there's that long-term connection with the customer segment. And then we're looking for entrepreneurs that bring that sort of that experience, connections, and ability to attract talent to uncover this opportunity. And if you get all of that right, scale is the byproduct.
I mean, I'm curious, how did you hear about the Paris Peace Forum, and what was the journey that took you here with us today?
So we were actually approached by a couple of entities that we know really well that are partners of the Paris Peace Forum. So the Ford Foundation and Open Society are well known to us. And so through conversations with them, we were able to sort of uncover what this forum was about. It is a little bit different than our normal sort of ecosystem that we operate in, but it's important for us to understand the different government groups and nonprofit groups that are working with this customer segment and finding ways to partner with them at our company levels.
Great.
Can I ask you, I think you're underscoring the need for treating low-income communities with dignity.
Exactly.
Right? And that's something like my home country is India. I think we have a strong Indian connection here. And I see this when children go to government schools, there is a sense of just an apologetic look because the infrastructure is abysmal, there is no places to sit. So how do you bring that conversation when you're having numbers like 40 million low-income households served, billions of dollars of capital raised, working with 40 companies, and I'm guessing you also work a lot in the United States. So how do you bring a conversation centered around dignity within your business model?
We do like to think of ourselves as like the private sector civil servant. We're really here to bring corporations to the surface and elevate the voice of this customer segment. So we think of, say, take that school example. You're actually looking at one rung higher. You're looking at the affordable private schools where there is actually an English medium. And the way that we get to understand the market dynamics is actually going into the village, going into tier 2, tier 3 cities, speaking directly to small business owners, to school owners, to students, to moms, to parents, and getting a sense of what their actual demands are, what their aspirations are. That's our market research, and we leverage all of that and look to find business opportunities that match those demands. And it's through that insight, it's a bottoms-up analysis that allows us to have a little bit of a competitive advantage over more traditional venture capital that goes into the market.
Perfect.
I see.
Thank you.
Have you been able to make to do meetings and meet interesting people to develop the project? Have you been able to make connections here at the forum?
We've made a few connections, and we're continuing to look for other projects and other participants that want to learn more about our program, but also want to get deeper with our portfolio companies and understand what they're doing on the ground to see if there's ways to connect, especially given the customer segment that we're all focusing on.
Excellent. And so what does 2022 look like and with the, let's say, the momentum with the Paris Peace Forum, and I'm sure other initiatives that you're taking, how do you look at the year coming now, and what are the projects of expansion or scaling?
Sure. So we hope that in 2022, that's next year. That's crazy. In 2022, that more and more people understand the Elevar method, understand its importance, think about that as a different way of investing private capital. We are raising more capital for our own strategy to deploy into more companies. And so we're looking for partners along the entire journey.
Just final question before we wrap up real quick. Capitalism has become a dreaded word in today's political culture. I think it's important to have these conversations, right? So are you finding more difficulty than you did before when you're talking about capitalism? And how are you perhaps relooking at the structure? Where do you think it falls within the umbrella of Paris Peace Forum, which is also why we wanted to bring you on board here to address the topic?
Yeah.
like that?
I think it's time for us to reevaluate what motives and incentives are in the more private sector capital markets. Capitalism does have a little bit of a gray cloud on top of it right now, and we think we are an entity that can bring some light through that darkness, because there is a way to apply a very private sector approach while still creating deep impact for this customer segment. And so we're looking for partners to elevate that story, both on the private and on the public side.
Thank you. Do you want to perhaps look at the camera and tell the audience watching, who have we have a broad portfolio of audience watching, right? Some civil society to businesses to heads of states and dignitaries, as to what you need to get to the next step that you envision for your project. So what do you need exactly, the community to help you with, as well as how can they follow the work that you do?
So what we need is more partners, we need more capital, and our companies need more support on the ground. The way to find out more about us is at our website, www.elevarequity.com, and we welcome any sort of conversation, both at the fund level as well as at our portfolio company level.
Excellent. Thank you. This was Ami Patel. Ami, thank you very much.
Patel.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry.
French people with their accents.
Already, always botching people's names. And she's in charge of the Elevar Equity project. Thank you for being with us. That was great.
Do you want to tell the audience about any other parallel sessions going on, or where they can?
Yes. Maybe we should tell you and perhaps prepare also an important session, which is the closing ceremony that we'll have from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. Paris time, and where we'll do two things. One is we want to use that closing session to do an assessment of COP26. We should have a number of interesting interventions, interesting speakers. If everything goes as planned technically, we have technical problems to solve. We should have John Kerry, the US Special Envoy for Climate, speaking us live from Glasgow. We should have also, and we will have, an intervention by Minister Hung Xiu from China, giving his assessment of COP26. We'll have assessment from the European Investment Bank, so European perspective on these things, as well as by Ban Ki-moon, the former Secretary General of the UN, who, as you know, is very much involved through the Global Green Growth Institute into the climate negotiations. So we'll have a very interesting, it's not a panel, it will be more like short interventions, trying to assess what COP26 delivered, and more importantly, what needs to be done next after COP26 and towards the most probably Egyptian COP of 2022. And that will be the beginning of the closing session. But then we'll have another really important moment, which I'll let you announce during that closing ceremony.
Is this the announcement of the 10 projects?
It is the announcement.
Okay, so we have Ami here with us, but as we keep reminding you, we also have 80 projects that we have selected this year. Usually it's 100 projects. This year we brought it down to 80 to truly be able to cater to the needs of each project as best as we can. And we have 10 selected projects that we will be announcing. Now, this is not to say that these 10 selected projects are in any way better than any of the 80 amazing projects that we have, but we just have certain criteria where we think that these specific projects could benefit from the year-long tailored support that we provide them.
I think they're applauding you, or they're applauding, and thank you. And then we look forward to seeing you a bit later. Please follow the sessions on the platform, and I hope to that we'll have a great closing ceremony. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.